sit and wait for a couple hours. See what happens. Tide's going out, and it's not going to stop raining for a couple days, so there's no waiting for good weather now. The adventure life. It's a good one. Can't go down to the river today, or up into the woods. Maybe later. Might be able to. I wanted to cut loose and go up to a river that's, what is this? Exactly 25 minutes up the highway to another river and float the camera down there for apparently there's a bunch of monster spawning rainbows in there. Rainbow trout, not steelhead. But anyways, I gotta get this done. Behind me, this is a, I've got 90 meat chickens coming, and I've got 20 or 25 turkeys coming. And they will be here right when I gotta go up north in September. So I'm getting as much done now as I can non-stop, so it doesn't, I'm not screwed up and have a whole bunch of stuff stacked up to get done before I gotta go. So this is going to be for all the home poultry being raised. I think about this will be it took me 2.5 days to get to this point. Solo, of course. And I gotta get back out of the coast. I'm not gonna go to the States the end of the month. It just doesn't make sense. I'd love to see Dave again and some other people, meet some people, but it would completely throw me off of getting stuff done. Cost me a couple $1,000 just to race down there basically by the end of it and race back and reach out to I don't know how many people would be there. So we can reach out to literally tens of thousands of people in seconds here. And I really need to get Dave up here, or me get down to Dave's place. And I'm sure that'll happen this year without a doubt. Now that the travel shit's all starting to relax for a little bit until they decide to restrict us again for whatever evil, dark reason it is they're doing it. Anyway, and also the big factor that made me decide to stay here was last evening I spoke to the people who are trying to book me for the end of the month. They're doing a study on eagles. Ultimately, it's a study on orcas, killer whales, but it starts with the eagles for them, and they have an arborist, which is obviously a faller, a logger, who has all the climbing gear and the ropes and gear is going to climb up the tree and get samples from the eagle nests, remote eagle nests, so they can find out exactly what kind of toxins are affecting them and where they may be coming from, and carry on the studies there. So I spoke to this guy for a little bit last night, and he's a wildlife biologist. And after we get all the formal details done, I dropped the question on him. I said, hey, so, and I explained to him my background and how I am very interested in wildlife, always have been. And I explained to him my professional background in the outdoors. And then I dropped the question. I said, so what do you got for me for Sasquatch topic? And he goes, oh. I go, it's okay, I've seen him, go ahead and let her rip. And right away he goes, actually, yeah, I had an encounter once before. I go, no way, whereabouts? And he said it was near Clem2, British Columbia. So we didn't get it. He said it sounded a lot like a gorilla. But anyways, we started talking about the topic, and then he asked me if I knew of the Bendernagels in Courtenay, because this guy lives in Courtenay, and that's where Dr. John Bendernagel lived in Courtenay. And I said, yeah, I met him years ago, went for breakfast with him, yada, yada, yada. And he says, oh, well, his grandson works with us, and he is the first-year biologist as well. I'm like, no shit. So, how interesting would that be? Well, the conversations are going to be interesting enough regardless, but how interesting would that be if, and he said that the grandson, John's grandson, is like a Wikipedia of the experiences and encounters of these beings himself. So, how interesting will that be if I can get these guys to possibly, while we're on these remote islands, if I got some time, set up the camera and crack it open and let the topic rip. Me and a few wildlife biologists on the west coast of Vancouver Island. I think that would benefit all of us a lot more than it would me going to the States for 2 days. Right? And probably not even making a video of it if I went. So that's what's going to go down. What else? Have I phoned the First Nations ladies? Not yet. I'll do that today. I just have to get to the next stage. I have my little personal goals of my projects here that I need to get done by this time, and I will phone them today and see what I can get going from that. See what they are urgently wanting to share with me or us through this channel, hopefully. What else? I think that's about it. Now, let's get the voices heard. Where am I? I gotta get back down the list. The emails are just piling in. Mark this as read. Now listen to this one. This is titled Lean and Mean. Haven't a clue what it's gonna say, as usual. Hello. I listened to Can-Am Missing 411 and heard David Platter speak about your site. I listened to several of your episodes in a row and ended for the day on your March 8th, 2022 episodes where you brought up dogmen. I've had many odd experiences, most of which involved my childhood home that was occupied by more than my family members. However, your comment on dogmen made me recall what I thought of as a very lean werewolf type of encounter that I had as a teen. This occurred in 1981 when I was a junior in high school. My friends and I were the D&D, SCI, FI, and Carl Sagan Cosmos types, and were not into drugs or alcohol. One of my friends called to say he had gotten a telescope as a gift and wanted to know if I wanted to go out with him to try it out. He was the only one of us that had his own ride, an old pale yellow truck. I lived in Kentucky at the time, just across the county line and close to LaGrange. Roy, my friend, said he knew of a gravel lane that was put in for an upcoming subdivision, and that was where we headed off to. I'm getting huge reflections behind me. That's the only shitty thing about outside with these things. This lane was nearly halfway between my house to the small town of LaGrange and area, which is rural but not remote by any stretch. As soon as we returned onto the gravel lane, I was alert and sensing a great threat. The lots for this development were very shallow, and the tree line ran maybe 30 yards deep or so from the lane. I kept peering into the tree line and knew that there was something in it keeping pace with the truck. We were moving slow, about 20 miles an hour or so, as it was a dead end. We had moonlight and a clear sky, which allowed me to see it running in the trees on 2 legs. And it was batting away small limbs and ducking large ones as it ran. It was spring, but no leaves yet, and the woods in the area were not thick. It looked like a rail-thin werewolf. Nothing like how they are depicted today in movies, like Underworld as an example, where they are massive hulking creatures. It was maybe 6 feet tall, but slightly hunched forward as it ran. It looked at me, I looked at it, and knew that if it got to the truck, we were in for it. That's creepier than shit. I rolled up my window and told Roy not to stop at the end of the cul-de-sac and to get us out of there. He asked what the trouble was, and I said that there was something coming for us and not to stop. So of course, he slowed to a stop and poked his head out the window at the end of the lane to look for himself. Needless to say, I got my point across by bellowing at him to get his fat head in the truck and hit the gas and roll up the window. He did all 3 and we sped off. I told him not to go to my house, but to head to the opposite direction to LaGrange, as I felt he was capable of following us. We went the long, out-of-the-way drive back home. Roy said he didn't see or feel any threat, but did not give me any grief about it. I knew that it wasn't over, and that I was going to come face to face with it, but I can't explain how I knew it. Months later, late summer, early fall, I was going to a friend's house one night. About 3 miles before her house, the road made a right turn left, then went downhill, then up into the hairpin right turn, nearly 90-degree turn. The right of the road was a ditch, fence, and pasture land. On the left was a bank and a cornfield where the crop was fully grown but still green. This cornfield followed the road on the left past the upcoming right-hand turn. As soon as I came through the left curve, I had that same sensation of threat and knew it was up there at the next turn in the cover of the corn. I just knew it, period. I was driving my mom's station wagon and knew that by the time I made any attempt at a turnaround on that narrow, no-shoulder road, like the Austin Powers in the hallway scene from the movie, it would be at my door. I figured I had to hit that right turn as fast as possible because I knew that if it could get on the car, it could get in the car. Made the turn, fishtailing all over the place, but keeping in on the pavement and halted to my friend's place. I had another encounter on I-71 just past the LaGrange on-ramp, where that same sensation hit me and I knew it was going to try to intercept me. Again, I hit the gas and I flew down the highway. I felt faint feelings that it was near, but not like those past 3 episodes. It seemed very distant and traveling. I still know I will face it one day and won't have the benefit of being in a car. Maybe this thing was what people say is a dogman. Thank you for providing a sounding board to those out there that have had encounters, and take care. My name is Susan Heights Carpenter, and like you, I am disgusted with not only our government in Canada with its contempt of its own citizens, but my own as well, and the directions they are wanting to drive us towards. Regards. Yeah, here on that one. Susan, I appreciate your email, and actually, I'm a little concerned about what's going on with you in this thing or these things. As I'm reading it, I was just naturally thinking, shit, I'm going to go down there and hang out with you and blow this thing's head off. Fuck. I wonder if Dave might be interested in this one, maybe. That sounds really unsettling to me, especially when your intuition is right, absolutely in tune, and obviously warning you, right? And I always tell everybody, you got to go with your intuition no matter what. If you're feeling what you're feeling and sensing what you feel you're sensing, you are, right? So that's a little concerning to me. I don't know much about the dogman topic, like I've shared with you guys before. We've had a fair amount of emails come in about the topic. I've told you my stance on it. It is unsettling for me, as I have said flat out, I am forced to accept the facts of these things because of all the testimonies from my fellow men and women sharing their honest encounters. I'm not a dumbass, right? You got to be a dumbass to ignore the people when they share all this non-stop, absolute similar descriptions, experiences from around the globe. You shun that and laugh at that, well, I guess you're probably too terrified, you don't want to accept the truth, or you're just about as smart as a pickle. That's my stance on that end of it too, right? We need more people like you to share with us. But also, hopefully, I'm going to hope that you email Dave Plattis, as I have a funny feeling maybe he might want to hear about this, maybe. Or he might possibly have something he could share with you to help you out. And I don't know if you have any firearms, but if your intuition is telling you, screaming at you these facts, I would suggest having something, some type of equalizer with you, right? I always got an equalizer very nearby myself, always. Now, make sure you email us back again too, all right, Susan? Keep us updated on what's going on. Make sure you share with us you're safe. And if you learn any more, all right, that may help somebody else out here. All right. This is titled Short and Sweet, but maybe a big puzzle piece. We're all over it. Please share. My name is Angie. Advade. Oh, and typo. An avid listener. One word, advade. Excuse me. An avid listener from when you started on the subject of Sabe. Thank you, Steve. Well, you're welcome. It's too easy. I just heard this on February 20th, 22. Since then, I have heard it twice. Both insects could be a huge puzzle piece. Bumblebees do not fly. Well, it appears they do. What is actually being witnessed is something called acoustic levitation. Inside a bumblebee, there is a hollow cavity next to the larynx. When they beat their wings, they begin resonating energy within this cavity. Once that resonance matches the 7.83 hertz of Earth's magnetic field, it becomes a free agent surrounded in an electromagnet in an envelope, enabling levitation. Beetle and anti-gravity. Now, expert Don A. Davidson explains the basis of Viktor Grebnikov's findings and how some insects actually fly in the levitation phase and report as a rotating vortex that creates a magnetic field that neutralizes gravity. A very interesting discovery. An electrostatic effect may also occur at the nano level. I'm just a simple hunting guide. I feel like I'm reading Japanese with these words. The matter subjected to this curricular motion also determines other effects. For example, it develops magnetic fields, which, if properly collected, can be transformed into energy. This is the anti-gravity that is created by the vortex system. It is not science fiction, but it is reality. The vortex is a simpler and more direct system to modify the balance of the directions of the so-called rays of gravity, therefore the motion. Now, with this discovery, it is said that perhaps the ancient Egyptians used this technique to build the pyramids. A new and interesting theory that could solve the whole enigma of the construction of these mysterious and enormous buildings, which are precious tools for deflecting the cosmic rays, but not only. It seems that these monuments would be real energy boosters connected with the sun and would exploit a technology similar to that created by Nikola Tesla on torsion fields. A very curious fact, the wings of beetles were used in the experiment, insects that even the Egyptians adored. Thank you. I stand with the people of Canada. Stay safe, use discernment. Angie Wilbur. Angie, that's absolutely interesting. Hugely interesting, actually. It's funny how our so-called educators simply just paint a cartoon picture of a bunch of people in loincloth making bamboo scaffolding and pulleys, right? That's how the pyramids were made. Whatever. Somebody sent me a screenshot. I got to go back and find it somewhere. There's a quote from, I think, an Indian scholar, as in India. What did they say? It was something pertaining to how we're not educated once we go into the school system. We're taught how to memorize. And it really struck home with me because just for me, I never dictate, but for me, I know that once we hit the public school system, we are being groomed. It's just a grooming. Make sure we follow the straight and narrow path of control. And as soon as they said that, I think the Indian scholar said it was something to the effect of, you do not learn by memorizing, you learn by experiencing, or something like that. If the person who did possibly share that somewhere on this channel, email it to me so I can read it clearly and make sense, all right? But it really struck a chord with me. It was last week, I think. And that is so true. It is so true, isn't it? That's why, and I'm not being insulting when I say this, but when I hear somebody having a PhD, big deal. It's a man-made credential. Man-made, modern man-made. That means shit. That means nothing to me. Nothing at all. Because I am well too aware of the real world around us and what's going on. And anything man-made, yeah. I'm going to bite my lip there. We're going to go on a big tangent. Anyway, all I'm saying is we're being groomed from day one. And the education system is a system and it's a sham. Anyway, babbling. Here, let me get some more coffee in me. Guarantees I'll annoy somebody in a minute. Even more. All right, here's another one. Mark, this is red. New here, but I'm in. Here's my positive encounter. Hello. My dad introduced me to your YouTube channel. I'm an empath and have had several encounters throughout my life. I have always felt things very deeply, especially in the woods. I watched a video where you read an email from a lady who heard a voice in her head and my ears perked up. I got goosebumps and my inner energy escalated. I've been there recently. I was single at the time, about 2019, and have always felt at home in the woods. I love going to the forest alone, just to listen to the trees and wind and animals. I'm a quiet hiker, so I see quite a bit of things. One day I was hiking alone in the afternoon, much to the chagrin of my family, who continues to warn me never to hike alone. I was in a beautiful area that I had only hiked a couple of times, and I wanted to see where it went. I was on a roll and ready to go far. However, I was going up a hill about 2 miles in, excited to see what was on the other side. And I heard a clear voice in my head telling me to turn around. I argued in my head, explaining that I wanted to see what was ahead. The voice got louder, like it was yelling at me, "Turn around now." It yelled. I never felt like I was in danger, but I felt the voice was trying to protect me and keep me safe. By the third time it yelled loudly in my head to turn around now. I stopped arguing, I stopped hiking and listened. I heard nothing. It was very quiet. The voice quieted but still spoke in my head, "Turn around, go back now, 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 now." I felt urgency to leave, as if there was something menacing ahead that the voice was protecting me from. I turned and hustled back the way I came. I was shaking, but not from fear of the voice. I felt like the voice was walking behind me and beside me like a friend trying to usher someone away from danger. I returned to my car and went on with my day. I kept thinking about the voice I had heard and was grateful for whatever reason it kept me safe. Thank you for sharing the story of the other woman who heard the voice in her head. I feel like I am not crazy after all. I'm married now and go hiking with my husband. He will hike ahead, not too far, and let me talk to the trees, which I love. I still feel at home in the woods, but I feel safer going with someone now. I'm not sure what I was protected from that day, but I am always grateful for the voice that kept me safe. Anyway, that's my latest encounter that I remember so well. Thank you again for sharing the stories of others. Stay safe, Dana. Also, sorry this is longer than I anticipated. Thanks for listening to my story. Dana, that was nothing. Nothing to read. Sorry, that was a shorty. All good. If I could offer up any kind of anything, I would suggest to your husband that when you guys go hiking, to let you go ahead and turn that one around. Okay? that gives me the alarm right off the bat. If I'm in the woods and Sarah comes with me, or anyone of the same experience in the woods or confidence or ability to defend themselves, not quite as much as myself, I put everybody ahead of me, especially children. You never put a child behind you when you're hiking the woods, ever. And yeah, if you could just possibly do that, if you could put the brakes on a little bit and let you get ahead of them and keep an eye out ahead, that'd be much better. But anyway, you're not the only one to share that. The voice, it comes in nonstop, right? Non-stop. And that's another reason I'm anticipating contacting the First Nation ladies here, because Sarah said they have mind speak going on currently as well. And who knows, maybe if I'm fortunate I can get in on that, maybe, right? It's never happened to me, but I'm ready for that one. I'm ready for it. I've heard enough of it and I've learned enough through all of you that I feel that it wouldn't, I mean, it'd be unnerving, but at least if I'm somewhat familiar with it and then it happens, I'll be able to react more accurately than I hope that I would than not, right? Because it's always, once you get home, oh, I should have done this, or oh man, I should have done that, but I was too freaked out, or whatever. I think I'm ready. So hopefully that might be an avenue for that to happen with me, and I can also see if I can get some questions answered and get some knowledge in for all of us, right? But like I said the other day, I had a friend of mine come over and drop a bunch of trees over here, and I went out to clean up the aftermath. And I had those earbuds in, which I'm not familiar with until this year, and I guess I got too far away from my phone, which is on the fence post over there, picking up the signal from the house just barely enough. And then once I got back in the signal, which was a while after playing the chainsaw, all of a sudden clear in my voice, connected, and it must have made me jump frickin' 20 feet in the air. Was not expecting it, and then instantly I thought, oh shit, I hope that's not, I wonder if that's how I'm gonna react if all of a sudden I heard that in the woods alone, right? The mind speak thing is absolutely amazing, crazy thing going on, I'll tell you what. Okay, let me mark this as red. So it's a fair chunk of writing here. Arizona 4, wife's first encounter. All right, yeah, I think I've heard from your group for a bit, or maybe I haven't got to it. Steve, more interactions from Arizona, but first let me say it's great that you're back at the plate and swinging away. Before getting to my wife's aha moment, I'd like to toss out some short tidbits of info for you and your listeners to chew on. Yes, there are bad forest people. Okay, for you guys that are familiar with the Arizona 4, these guys are a group who are absolutely having incredible experiences and knowledge gathering with these beings. There are also other beings out there, worse than the average bad forest person that just scares away humans. One of the things we learned is that if you happened to learn a forest person's name that is not friendly, it is wise not to speak that name. We were warned about this during one of the evenings out. The reason is that this being will know or hear his name and will probably come and not be happy with us. The forest people that were visiting us that night apparently did not want this one to show up. Hopefully Chuck or Kevin will write you about their interaction with this grumpy guy in his home area. Since I was not there, I'll have to end that one at this point. That sounds interesting, and I don't even want a list of the names. Not just yet, anyway. I don't remember all the details, but that was one hell of a trip for them. We also have found out that in their society, members actually have jobs or responsibilities. Like this one female, I don't remember her name, stated she is a teacher. She teaches their young. Very interesting, huh? One of the things I learned early on was the topic of a group's conversation will bring in our forest friends or drive them away. Biblical or spiritual talk has their interest, as does general talk about them. You know, what we think they are, what they can do and stuff like that. I've been zapped a few times, to say the least, when I say specific things that I believe, and when they come to confirm this statement, I get the confirmation zap or tingle. The big thing they do not like and will not allow their young to hear is about violence. Talk about war, killing, and such. We learned that the hard way. Now let's get to my wife's first interaction. There's a few of us sitting out just talking, as we normally do each camping evening, waiting for our friends to show up. Usually about 45 minutes to an hour and a half after dark is the ETA for them to show. That is, if they're showing up that evening. So it's plenty dark this night, and they are around us. My wife is to my left. If I stretched out my arm, I could touch the back of her neck. I could see her, but not well. My friend is to my right, a little over an arm's length away. His wife was to his right, and Kevin was to my wife's left. We were sitting in a U pattern, so we could have eyes close to 360 degrees. Kevin was far out from my wife, 8 to 10 feet. During this visitation/interaction period, all of a sudden my wife snapped at me to stop poking her. This is a rather cold evening, so my hands not only had gloves on, but they were in front of my jacket pockets. I told her I didn't poke her. I raised my hands forward, still in my pockets, and said, "See, my hands are in my pockets." Needless to say, this is not proof enough, and she told me not to poke her. Not the first time I was accused of doing something I didn't do, but on we go. Let's now fast forward to the next morning. I was in my enclosed trailer doing something at my workbench when my friend that was to my right came to the door and asked if I was free to talk. And I said, "Sure, step in my office." He, let's call him Al, not his real name, asked if I remembered when my wife told me to stop poking her. I said, "Yeah," and that I did not poke her. Al says, "I know you didn't." I was puzzled and froze for a second. Then I asked, "How do you know I didn't?" Al says, "Because we were talking just before the poking, and he thought he saw an arm behind my wife's neck and thought it was mine." He then said he looked and saw my hands in my pockets. As he looked back to the shadow arm is when my wife snapped at me. I'll catch hell for this post because she's going to listen to it, and she will say that she did not snap at me. 30 years of marriage is great, LOL. Anyway, I looked at Al and said, "Why didn't you back me up?" Well, he said, "Because I got poked too." I had a good chuckle, and he continued that he had to process what went down. You see, Al is very much an analytical type person. He did not believe in Bigfoot, but I kept him up on my adventures with the Arizona 4, and he in turn tells his wife about some of the things I tell him. This trip we were going on, I invited him and his wife to go, but he passed. He was not really interested in going. When he told his wife, she told him, "Oh, we're going." So that is why he was there. LOL. This story is not yet done. So the next day, Al and his wife had to leave for work. So the next night, Kevin, myself, and my wife were the only ones there. We sat fairly far from each other that next night. Before it got dark, I leaned towards my lovely, non-snapping wife as I tried to touch her from my chair. My hand was a good 5 feet from her, if not more. She said, yeah, you can't reach me." Of course, she still thought I poked her. Just a note, no one does stuff like that in our group. It either happens on its own or it doesn't happen. Anyway, it got dark and my wife was talking when all of a sudden her voice went super high-pitched, like she got scared. Kevin immediately started laughing and said, "You got poked again, didn't you?" Her only reply was, "Maybe." She was pretty quiet the rest of the night. When this happened, I immediately, biggest shit-eating grin because I knew what happened. Further background info. This was my wife's first camping, first that we sat out with the sole intent to interact with these forest people. This actually spooked her pretty good, and it took a fair amount of time before she would go back up there. It was also my friend's first trip to this site, and never had he or his wife been squatching before. Now a little bit more background and honestly, I actually asked the forest people when I went to the gift stump if they could do something to help prove to my wife and my friend that they were real, like poke them or snap some branches or something. I know that this was done by some of the young one. They got extra powdered donuts that day. The next day, I tell you, laugh my ass off. Before I close on this, I want to say that just because you ask them to do something doesn't mean they're going to do it. I was honored and happy they did. Everything they do is done when they want and if they want. I'm just happy they did. It was awesome. One last thing, you do get a lot of experiences from Native Americans. I find so many of these stories spot on. Not that many of the other posts you read are good, because they are. Sorry, sometimes the reflection just kills me sometimes, like every fifth sentence. Not that many of the other posts you read are good, because they are. It just seems that there is it just seems that there is a stronger link between Native Americans and the forest people. As stated before, I listen to most of your posts, hoping to gain tidbits of info to help me figure this mystery. How to Hunt has helped me fill in a number of puzzle pieces. I have a very good friend that is a Native American, Navajo to be exact. I tried to get him to go camping with me. Nothing doing. He will not go. He knows they are real, but he believes they are demonic and/or from the Nephilim. That doesn't stop me from trying to get him to go. We have been friends for years. All I have to do is give him that shit-eating grin and he snaps back at me, I'm not going camping with you. LOL, take care, Rob. Rob, appreciate it, man. Sorry it took me a while to get to it, but if you'd have seen, the emails are stacked up like frickin' cordwood. And I want to hear more from you guys, all right? I think it's valuable information for me and whoever else listening finds it valuable at the same time. Now, what am I going to do now? The sun's really actually poking through. Isn't that amazing? Third day of sun in, 6 months? So the glare on the phone is a little too much right now to do this out here. I'd have to go into the man cave. Anyway, I got to get my ass in gear. I got to get a roof on this thing and get up to the next stage that I wanted to get it to before I got to take off to the coast again, which is, I think, tomorrow night, maybe. And I really have to phone the ladies here and get in contact with them. But anyway, keep the information coming in. Whoa, Rob, that's what I was thinking too, is when you say you go at nighttime, is there any way, does your group know why darkness has anything to do with more action than daylight? That's what I'm curious about. Why the darkness? Why is a lot of things happening in the dark? Why does the action always start at 1, 2 in the morning in some places? Because my grandfather back in the day, I mean, he ran into that being basically right, in the middle of day, in the middle of July, sun beating down, hot out in the timber on the edge of a creek. We have had all sorts of daylight experiences. I've had, I don't know how many daylight experiences. What else? I shared with a friend of mine. Anyways, it would be good if you could throw down, find out why the darkness. Why does it have to be dark out? I'm curious about that one. Why does anything creepy and scary have to be associated with darkness when it comes to us in the unknown, right? And what else? Another thing. I was talking to a friend of mine on the coast the other day. We're having a beer after fishing. Lifelong guide and logger is not interested in this topic at all. I don't bring it up just because you know when somebody's into it or not, and I don't give a shit if anybody's not into it. I don't need to talk to them about it. But we're sitting there talking stories, and all of a sudden I said, I got a story for you. We're talking about bears. Obviously, because I was somewhat bear hunting and filming for a few days there. And I shared with him the time when, years back, when I did the irresponsible move of shooting that bear. I took the arrow head off of the arrow because my previous bow would just bounce the arrows off the bears at home on the porch. And I shot that bear with the newer compound bow, and it actually penetrated his ass, cheek, and he took off with my arrow. And it was roughly 7 months later, that arrow was sticking out of the snow, which nobody had gone up that deactivated road. There's probably 4 or 5 feet of snow on that road. I'm the only one going up there trapping wolves, and there was that arrow sticking out of the snow maybe buried into the snow that much, straight up and down on the side of the road, like it was put there for me, and not a footprint anywhere. No trees overhead. It's on a steep slope like this. I remember specifically there is rock on the right, blasted out for the road, and then steep bank. Maybe a couple tops of trees, you know, as you go out from the bank about 5 or 10 yards. So my question is there any way you can come up with an answer as to how that went down? Because that's a very odd one for me. And it's right in the middle of where I've heard these beings blasting on trees. What else? It's only about 7 kilometers to where I've seen one. What else? I know of at least half a dozen experiences tight around that area. So I have a funny feeling that arrow in the snow is associated with these beings. How they pulled that off is beyond me, or how it went down, I don't know. And it actually gives me goosebumps when I tell that story. But anyways, gotta get going. Here comes the horse. It's coming up to the back of the camera, and this is a different camera. I don't need the horse knocking this one over. I'm gonna get going and share my story at howtohunt.com. Thanks again, Rob, for emailing me, all right? Us. And make sure you do again, all right? As well as anybody else out there who's trying to get something off their chest or has something of value that's going to help somebody here, all right? Be back shortly.